Okay. Well, thanks for talking to me today, Megan.
Sure.
Before we start, would you just like to introduce yourself and your position here at Metro?
So I'm Megan Morse and I'm the General Manager of Business Improvement Services for Metro.
Excellent. Great. Well, thank you so much for giving me your time. Firstly, I guess an update on the Green Card project. Our students have known about it from a previous subject. So
Sure.
where are we since it started to replace the paper tickets?
So we're almost 7 years down the track with Green Card. That it was initially rolled out in 2009. We undertook another fairly significant update of our fare structure in October of 2015. And in the lead up to that, we undertook another targeted promotion of the Green Card product, whereby we made the cards available free of charge for 8 weeks ahead of the withdrawal of 2 more of the paper ticket types. That put another 13,000 Green Cards into circulation, so up from a base of about 165,000 active Green Cards.
Wow.
And has triggered another quite significant increase in the percentage utilisation of the product. So where we were averaging sort of mid 65% of tender on any given day on our buses, we're now operating consistently in the high 70s, low 80s, which is the highest level of utilisation the business has ever achieved.
Fantastic.
So I guess from our perspective, it lowers the barrier to people using the bus, that we find that people who've got Green Cards travel with us more frequently than other customer types. There's a significant cost benefit for passengers, that Green Card involves a discount on every fare, whether that's by single journey type or capped across a day. It's now been extended to 2 other operators in the state, so TassieLink and O'Driscoll's are both also using the product, and are both recording higher levels of interoperability between Metro customers and their customers. I guess from our perspective it continues to go from strength to strength.
Which is fantastic, because that was mentioned in the early interview, that the interrelations with the different operators was one objective. So it's fantastic to hear that it has that uplift.
It was quite challenging to I think if we'd understood what that project was going to ask of us at the start, we would have allocated twice the time or twice the resources.
Right.
But certainly, we've been able to demonstrate that it is possible. And it's great to have a very satisfied client partner in that endeavour, in terms of TassieLink, very positive about what it's brought to their business.
Great, fantastic. Okay, so how does the timetable project that Metro's, I suppose, would in the midst of link in with the Green Card project?
So there's not a lot of direct links between those 2 projects, I guess, short of obviously we have significantly more data and significantly more reliable data about our Green Card customers than we do about people purchasing paper tickets. And I guess the opportunity to go back into the market with a renewed, refreshed network offering, we naturally took that opportunity to continue to promote Green Card through that. So it features on all our promotional material. I guess the other thing, as a secondary element, there are elements within the network's design that incentivise use of Green Card. So for example, we've established an Eastern Turn Up and Go corridor, reflecting the same arrangements, I guess, as we've had in the North now for several years, which designs in more transferring at the Rosny and the Shoreline interchanges. You're able to do that on a Green Card without incurring a price penalty. You're not able to do that on a paper ticket without incurring a price penalty. So we've had another surge in Green Card uptake off the back of people twigging that they are able to use the new network more flexibly with a Green Card.
Okay, great. Okay, so just quickly touching back on the more data, obviously the Metro card can give you the Green Card can give you more data for you to link in, and Rob mentioned that as part of the business intelligence drive that Metro had.
Yes. So I think there's not a lot that we would do differently, perhaps, about Green Card. That Green Card, in comparison to some of the experiences in other mainland states, was a very smooth rollout.
Yes.
But anyone who travels with the product would know that you only swipe as you board the bus, that
yes.
you don't swipe when you
leave.
Alight, which
yep.
Is a common feature in a lot of the other electronic ticketing systems. So we have to do a little bit of interpretation and assumption to try to understand people's journey patterns, given that we currently only have notionally half of the data about their travel.
Yep. Is that something you're going to
we're not everything in Busland
yes.
is designed to have quite a long life cycle, so we're technically only halfway through Green Card's projected, promised on the box life cycle. In saying that, I guess when you think about how much technology has changed since 2009, you're reporting me on a device that didn't exist in 2009. So certainly there are some elements of the second generation ticketing system that would be attractive to bring into a future upgrade.
Excellent, great. So leading on then to the timetabling project, what were the motivations for that one?
Okay. So to put a fairly big project in a pretty tight nutshell, the last time the Greater Hobart Network had been reviewed was 1985.
Wow.
When the building we're currently sitting in, when the Springfield Interchange was built and opened. So anyone who has lived in Hobart at any point in the last 30 years would appreciate that the city has changed a lot in that time. People's work patterns, people's travel patterns, people's education, leisure, study patterns have all changed dramatically. So I guess we had a network that wasn't able to reflect the way that people wanted to travel, that it had a fair bit of tinkering with in the intervening 30 years, which doesn't always result in an efficient operation. And I guess a pretty firm belief that we could do better. I think we have a pretty strong service mentality, that we understand we're a public transport provider, and so we're pretty motivated about serving communities' needs as well as we can. So further to that, the work that underpinned the Hobart Network Review actually started 18 months, nearly 2 years ago, with an attempt to look at our northern network in isolation. Hobart was seen as a pretty big job, and we thought we'd just start in the north. And I guess it demonstrated, perhaps not surprisingly, that our network is so interconnected that trying to change one element in isolation just wasn't viable.
Right.
So we had to effectively cease that work, take a deep breath and regroup to look at the network as a whole. So that's the work we did across 2015 that we took live on 10 January 2016.
Yep. Okay, great. So massive project.
Yes.
You've learnt lessons already about the integration of the network. So what sort of data was then captured for this project?
Yep. So I guess as we've talked about already, the biggest and the deepest pool of data that we have available comes off, we call them our BCUs, bus control units, which are the little black box that people swipe their green card on as they get on a bus. And so it provides obviously information about ticketing and journey patterns. It also gives us quite a lot of information about how buses are performing on the road. So we have an expectation about where a bus will be at varying points in time, not at every minute, but varying points in time across a journey. And so far and away that automatically generated pool of data relating to the ticketing system underpinned the bulk of the analysis of existing routes. The other two elements that I guess we aim to triangulate data as much as we can. We have a system whereby our bus operators, the people who drive the buses, can alert us to things that are not performing in the way they expect. So we have quite a considerable pool of that data available to us. We also track all of our customer feedback very carefully.
Right.
And so that was also another significant pool of data. So I guess in relation to new routes, where obviously some of that data wasn't available, we did some road testing. We made some assumptions based on performance of like journeys and so on. But as much as possible, we were tapping into data about the live performance of the network leading into the revision.
Okay, so we've got a bit of external and internal sources of data. And so really why the data was collected, well, you sort of answered that. If I'm right, it was to provide you with a deeper understanding of what was happening and what were people's wants for future travel.
People have a very high level of expectation about Metro's performance. That part of the way to be a competitive offering as a public transport provider is to be reliable.
Yep.
And so even within the day-to-day management of the business, we track a lot of those parameters on an ongoing basis, whether we're in review mode or not.
Yep.
We take that stuff pretty seriously.
Fantastic. So now you're in the midst of Green Card. The new timetabling is taking off, and you've implemented that. What are the information requirements, do you think, for Metro for the next 3 to 5 years to keep you in that forward momentum?
So I think the sources of data will continue to be heavily reliant on those sources. I guess in terms of looking forward, the appetite for real-time information in this sector is growing, both in terms of how we manage and operate the business, but also from our external stakeholders, our customers, that I think we draw the comparison internally quite a lot, that at a point in time where you can now track the arrival of a pizza, that people like to know where their bus is and they can't see it. So I think overcoming some of the hurdles, and there are some quite considerable hurdles, particularly in Tasmania in relation to our on-road infrastructure. The idea of some of the places we go don't lend themselves readily to generating and receiving that kind of data. But I think if we had to pick one thing that's likely to be different in 3 to 5 years to what it is now, I think real-time information will feature more highly than it does currently.
Right, so just to quickly divert to the real-time information, the Metro app, how would that focus in that then?
Metro app's been a huge success.
Oh, great.
So again, I guess in terms of the admittedly, currently, the iOS version more than the Android version. Any Android users out there, feel free to download the Android versions of the app. But we're continuing to receive an increasing number of inquiries through the app, and looking at mechanisms whereby we can continue to extend the information that we make available to people through that channel. And certainly, it taps into a group of people who are never going to put a paper timetable in their handbag, or so I think the app's been an innovation that we're rightfully pretty pleased with how that worked out. It's certainly been worth doing.
Fantastic, that's great. And I suppose, is there processes in the app where you can you predict consumer behaviour or track consumer behaviour within the app, or not as much yet? Not the purpose.
Not yet.
Yep.
Again, I think we don't use the app a lot in terms of analytics currently. I think in terms of the thing we perhaps monitor more closely in terms of our online interaction with people is Green Card top-up. And so, again, naturally, as we increase the usage of Green Card, the need for people to be able to deposit funds on what is essentially an electronic purse increases. And so having the capacity to do that through the app as well as the website has been very positive. We refresh that more frequently than we used to because we're handling a higher volume of transactions through it. So, rather than I put $20 on it this morning and it's still not there this afternoon, we would hope that's no longer an experience that people are having. But I think its scope will continue to increase as we come up with ideas. And some of our app users are pretty quick to offer us feedback, which we love. So they're sometimes leading us in directions that we might not come up with on our own, which is fantastic.
Fantastic. So probably one of our last questions, any unexpected benefits or business changes since the timetable's online?
So I guess you listed out a couple of the things that happened not quite simultaneously, but nearly simultaneously. I guess the other thing that bus travel is a surprisingly seasonal business, and so we experienced an enormous peak in demand as primary and secondary schools resume in early February, followed not terribly long after by university and TAFE students and so forth in mid to late February. So not to time limit the recording here, but we've had a great deal of media coverage and debate about the level of congestion that Hobart has experienced over the last 4 weeks. And that's obviously had significant impact on Metro's performance.
Yep.
Because we get stuck in traffic like everyone else
does.
So I guess it's been a really interesting situation for us that we've been actively and very vocally advocating for bus prioritisation measures with local government, with state government over a long period of time that Tasmania doesn't offer very much in the way of bus prioritisation relative to other mainland states. And so I guess we're hopeful that there might be a silver lining in the congestion that Hobart particularly is currently experiencing, to the extent that I think we're able to demonstrate we are attracting increased patronage, which is what you would hope off the back of a revitalised network. And so every bus takes somewhere between 50 and 60 vehicles off a road. If we can fill buses, the appeal of adding then some advantage over everyone else who's stuck in their car, we become a more competitive and a more compelling proposition. So we didn't foresee how bad congestion would be. Much as we know there's a lot of road work and development work going on, it has been the perfect storm, as many people have said. And so, as much as we'd love it to get back to normal, the upside of that difficulty may be that we get some traction on measures that will have long-term benefit for the business.
Okay, so you've actually had increased patronage since. That's great news. That's good.
And again, it was designed so that we would be better meeting people's needs. We made very deliberate efforts to improve the travel time of our express services, for example. So about making it a more compelling and a more attractive proposition. But the literature in the space certainly suggests that sometimes people are a bit wary of new networks. Confusing. So we were prepared for the fact that we might have had some drop off in the first 3 months. But it's been
fantastic.
Go from day one.
That's great.
We're very excited.
That's great. So I guess what's next for Metro?
So I think we've still got a little bit of betting to do in Hobart. Again, in speaking to the university, the through services from the north, south and east to the university were one of the big innovations in this new network, and have been among the most popular of the new services. So we're kind of victims of our success in that regard, but we're trying to get the balance of supply and demand right for some of those services. Metro operates networks in Launceston and Burnie, and so Hobart was the beginning of a review cycle that will see us increasingly active in Launceston in the coming 12 to 18 months. We'll be in Burnie after that. So again, I think that it's the inherent nature of a business improvement cycle that you're watching, changing, monitoring all the time. So I guess at a strategic level for the business, we have one of the older bus fleets in the country, and so we have a lot of advocacy underway currently about trying to bring down the average age of our fleet, which has a range of benefits for both the business and for passengers, for the environment. There's a range of benefits for many stakeholders around that. So again, to go back to your earlier question, all of those things hinge on the persuasiveness of your argument. Your argument normally comes down to the quality of your data. So as much as it's a very small team of people who look after the data upstairs here, there's a lot riding on it.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Pleasure.